What's up everyone? Just an aside before the aside. On the day of recording, I was not feeling very well, so if I sound a little bit out of it, that's why. Still went ahead and recorded though, so enjoy the episode. And, again, I said this in the ramble before the ramble, but, the preamble was recorded a few days before. Just wanted to get that out of the way. Hope you enjoy, and, yeah, bye. Hello everyone, it's Roxy Boxy, just recording this a few days before the actual episode of Conversational Footsies episode 2. Just, wanted to get some housekeeping out of the way and thought now would be the best time to do it. So, first things first, I guess if you haven't seen it already, I have a Discord server up for streams and YouTube videos. So if you want to join in, feel free. I think I'll put a link down in the description, and there's a link on my Twitter. Um, and of course, speaking of Twitter, um, we're almost at 100 followers. Well, sort of. We're halfway there. I kind of wanted to do something special for 100 followers. I'm not sure, but I will figure something out. And what else? Twitch schedule will be coming out soon. I know it's a bit cockamamie right now, but I'll definitely get one of those. And I guess last thing I have to say is, as always, if you want to support me and support this creative projects that I have, my Ko-fi is a great place to do so. $3 a donation, $3 donation, sorry, helps a ton. And all the money that I get through my Ko-fi is going to go towards either living expenses or putting it back into what I make. So, yeah. Uh, anyway, like I said, this is being recorded a few days in advance, but just wanted to get this out of the way. So now I leave you to enjoy the show. Thank you all for watching, and enjoy! Hello, everyone. My name's Roxy Poxy, and welcome to Conversational Footsies, a podcast slash interview series slash whatever this even is about fighting games and the people who play them. I am actually really excited to introduce today's guest, that being Shibu. Correct me if I'm pronouncing this wrong. Shiburutsu?
Shibarizu? Yeah, that'll do. Just
Shiburi.
Shib is fine. Everyone
All
calls
right.
me that.
All right. Administrator for the Shoryuken and Mizuumi wikis, and he is also involved with several other communities, Gotta Be Legend and Digital Creator. Or Creator. Sorry, I might have misspelled it when I
Yeah, Digital Crafter.
Digital
They make
Crafter.
the Fight of Animals game. I don't know if anyone's played it. Or Fight of Gods, Fight of Animals, both two fighting games with rollback netcode that people play every once in a while. Good to be on the show.
Yeah. Did you have anything else that you wanted to introduce yourself with?
Well, I'm sure people know me for all the things that you mentioned. And I'll just roll with those credentials for now because I think everything else is just kind of irrelevant. So no, absolutely no. I think we've covered everything.
All right. So the question I like to ask everyone, or I want to start asking everyone, this is the second episode after all, is what was your first fighting game experience?
I think about this one a lot because there's a lot of conversation in FGC discourse at large about people who were in the arcades and people who grew up in that Western arcade scene. People who they've been playing Street Fighter since they were in diapers and stuff like that. And I've never had that experience. The first fighting game I ever played was Tekken 3 on the PS1, and I didn't do anything other than mash buttons because it was just another game that my parents had bought for me for my PlayStation, right? And I was like a little kid; I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
I kind of thought Tekken 3 was cool. I liked playing Eddie. I still like playing Eddie in Tekken 3, but I don't consider that to be my first experience. That was just me having yet another game in my library. My first experience with fighting games was probably when I found out about BlazBlue through Xbox Live on the 360. I saw some screenshots of it, just looking through games, and I decided I really wanted to try this game. It looks really cool. I had never seen anything like it. I had been aware of Street Fighter 4, and that was it. But BlazBlue looked cool, and I remember that I looked all over And there was out of like the 5 GameStops in my area. I was living in Florida at the time. Of the 5 GameStops in my area, only one of them had a copy. It was used. I spent $20 on it, and I took it home. And my first experience with it is that I did not understand a thing. BlazBlue is a difficult game to learn. Despite how cool it looked, I did not understand a thing. I kind of played with it a little bit. I don't remember if I ever got to play online. I didn't have Xbox Live very often. Um, but my first experience with fighting games is kind of being very confused by them. Uh, Historically, in that era, anime fighters did not have a lot of resources. I don't even remember if I had internet. Maybe I looked at a GameFAQs one time. Um, so I didn't really play a lot of fighting games after that. I think when I really started getting back into fighting games was when Dragon Ball FighterZ came out. I looked at it and I thought it looked cool, and I decided I would give it another effort. And Dragon Ball FighterZ is a much more accessible game, so I have to credit it to getting me back into FGC. But yeah, my first real fighting game experience, I would say, is being extremely confused by BlazBlue.
Yeah, to be completely honest, I have a lot more experience with like Guilty Gear than BlazBlue, but
I
it
had never even heard of Guilty Gear at the time. I don't remember if Exarg was out. I don't remember. I don't think I had ever heard of it. I had never heard of most fighting games aside from Street Fighter and Tekken
yeah,
until BlazBlue came around.
yeah, BlazBlue is a series I've definitely wanted to get into for some time, just to at least say that I've tried it because
I still can't get into it. I mean, I have all of them now just because I picked them up over sales, and they're definitely interesting games. But the online experience that I'm going to have to rely on to really learn them, because I mean, I played a couple of games of it offline, right, at like a convention where I know the people who bring the video games there, and they really like BlazBlue. So sometimes I would sit down and play with them, but that's just me pressing buttons and seeing what works. I have never really gotten the opportunity because I've never had like a real offline scene to try it with. But I will, as soon as the situation changes, I will definitely get back on there because I would definitely love to be competent at that game after so long.
yeah, I guess I have to ask because I know like the Marvel community has a Parsec scene. Is there nothing like that for BlazBlue? BlazBlue?
No, there isn't. And I was speaking to the BlazBlue community TOs, and they are interested in doing this. And I actually ran a little experiment where I got somebody to play a Parsec server with BBCF, the latest version. And there's a problem with the way that the PC version of BlazBlue reads controllers, to where you have to close the game, connect both controllers, and then reopen the game. So that makes it a lot harder for you to run Parsec, because the way Parsec works for every other game is that when the game ends, both players disconnect their controllers, 2 players connect back in, they go to character select, they bind their buttons, and they can play. And this workflow is very quick. But with BBCF, you have to quit the game, connect both controllers, verify that they're working, go back in, bind the controllers, then you can play. That is something I'm trying to solve, but it really hinders the ability to play the game on Parsec. Still, if we can get around that, I would love to be involved in like a Parsec BBCF lobby if that's ever a thing. I know that I have friends who are specifically Chikzama, who is very interested in having something like that done. So maybe sometime this year we'll see it.
Yeah, that honestly be really cool to see because it's a game that I know about and I know like its relevance with regards to the history of fighting games and that, but it's definitely something I'd love to see more of just to see more people try it out. And honestly, I'd love to have a scene to try it out myself. Um,
Yeah, I mean, if you guys live anywhere near the U.S., central U.S., like Texas area, check out Chikzama on Twitter, who does like BBCF open lobbies. So if you live closer to them, unlike me, give it a try. You might have a good time playing NetPlay. If you guys live in central U.S., give it a try. I mean, I live out here in Central America, so it's a little harder for me. But I'm sure there are a lot of places where you can play BB online if you're willing to look.
yeah. Um, you mentioned that you played Fighter Z. Can I ask what your team was when you started out?
Oh, my team in Fighter Z. When I started, it's probably not that different from what I play now, which is Goku Black, uh, base Goku, SSJ Goku, and Adult Gohan. Are the team I like to play. They're all like very similar to each other
Uh,
because I find some of the characters in DBZ honestly a little weird. But that's probably I used to play a lot of Vegito at the start when like it was like season 1 and the DLC had just come out and all the DLC characters were busted. Um, Bardock, Vegito is good online. So my first team is probably similar to Goku Black, something like Goku Black, Adult Gohan as a Jacob.
Yeah, when I started out, I played on a friend's recommendation. I think I played Cell, Goku Black, Tien, and I know Tien just got buffed a few months ago, but every time I hop back in, I play with a different team just because I'm still trying to find that one that like scratches the itch.
I mean, tag fighters still give me a hard time, and like I couldn't even do like crowd like when I started. You have to understand when I started playing Fighter Z, I couldn't even do like crouching medium, stand medium, jump. I couldn't even do that. Like it just I spent hours just trying to jump. Now I can do it no problem. I can do like a basic combo with any character with no problem. I can do beam conversion. I can do assist calls. All of that. I didn't have any idea how to do any of that when I started playing Fighter. And that probably hindered some of the progress I had with that game because like I was playing extremely basic characters with extremely basic toolkits for the like 200 hours that I played it before I decided that the net play was just too much for me to deal with and I just dropped the game. But like Fighter Z was like really formative for me because I didn't know how to do the most basic things in any fighting game prior to that.
Yeah, it definitely, I know it brought a lot of people in, brought me in, so even if I don't play it, I am really grateful that it brought so many people in. Um, then I guess, because I'm looking here at the list, so I guess the follow up, was Fighter Z the first game you competed competitively in, or was there something else?
Competitively, no, I don't think I ever entered any tournaments for Fighter. I wouldn't honestly. Um, knowing knowing that, I mean, I could have entered an offline bracket a couple of times, but I didn't. Um, I played my first competitive experience. Geez, that's a difficult question because I don't remember. I probably played in a couple of Fight K tournaments that I just have no recollection of. But I would say the way I got my start competitively was just playing poverty games like Fight of Animals. I had been playing a little bit of tournaments. I had been playing like Third Strike on Fightcade a couple of times. I didn't mention that part. I had started playing Third Strike on Fightcade around the same time I started playing Fighter Z. And while I didn't ever get very far in Third Strike, and to this day I'm not very far in Third Strike, the fact that it had rollback netcode opened my eyes, and I dropped Fighter Z like a rock shortly after that because I was not willing to deal with it. The connections in that game were honestly infuriating, and I was using the PC version, the one that supposedly has better net play. Um, but my first competitive experience, I don't know if I can really pin it down. Probably just small time little Fight K tournaments is where I started. I don't remember honestly.
Yeah, um, I do know, this, using the questions as a guide, but, I do know that I've seen you talk a lot about, like, Melty Blood in that, and so how involved are you with the Melty Blood community?
Okay, so this is going to I'm going to touch on what I've been working on the past week. Literally the past week. It's just like not even like this project did not exist on Monday of
Oh,
this past week, I've been working on a graphical front end for the caster version of Melty Blood. So anyone who's ever played Melty Blood online with the rollback netcode version, not the Steam version, right, the community edition, you know that you have to click on caster, and caster brings up this black box. You have to use your keyboard, right, to enter your IPs and to launch different modes and all that stuff. And it's very ugly, but also there are problems associated with it. Like there's a bug with the way spectating works where you have to quit the caster and reopen the caster every time you want to spectate a different game. Otherwise, the spectator client has issues connecting. So there's like that experience, that user experience is very bad. We could do better. So over the past week, what I put together was a program that basically manages the caster for you. It'll turn it off when it's not being used. It'll turn it on when it's being used, and it will hide that window altogether. And it will give you instead a nice, clean user interface that you can use with your mouse and keyboard. And that way, you with less clicks, with less reopening. No, you don't have to reopen the program. You can do everything that you already do with Caster. Um, this project, which is called Concerto, and you can see it on my Twitter, is kind of the start of a better experience for Melty Blood. I really want to see a better program to open Melty Blood, right? I don't think in the next few years we're going to see an update to Melty Blood. Even though there's the Tsukihime remake for the visual novel, I don't suspect that we're ever going to see a major release of Melty Blood, much less one with rollback netcode, in the coming years. I don't think the French bred are going to go back and do that. So for that reason, if we want Melty Blood to continue, right, to continue to be popular, and it is a good thing that it is popular, then we need to create better experiences for it. So that's one of the things that I've been working on over the past week.
That's honestly really cool to hear. I know that's the main reasons why I picked it up was I mean I got reminded by just by seeing you talk about it, and then I mean it's free, which is always a plus. But it is really good in my opinion to always have those like free options and easily available games for people to
Yeah,
try out.
there's a conversation that people have about the way that fighting games are beholden to their publishers, right? That if a publisher doesn't give you the tools, and the game is dead, right? But there are examples such as Melty Blood, such as Fightcade, right? Such as Eternal Fighter Zero, which also has a similar client. It's called EFZ Revival. There's Akatsuki Blitzkampf. There's the Toho Fighters. They have their own casters. Games that live in this situation they can be taken from the publisher, and they can be given to the community, right? Nobody's creating this update except for the community. There's nobody, there's no studio making this. The community gets around and they decide that they want to make the experience better, so they do it, right? And we've seen that with Parsec as well. Parsec, nobody's updating Marvel 3 anymore. There's not gonna. I promise you guys, there's not gonna be a UMVC 3 update. So now people are running it on Parsec because that is their way of making the game better. And now there's like a bunch of mods for gameplay and character mods and stuff that exist for Marvel because people want to keep playing the game, and now it's in the community's hands to make it better. Stuff like that needs to be supported because if we decide that Capcom or Bandai Namco or ArcSys decide what we get to play and what we don't get to play, then our community will become very lost, right? And it will continually get smaller, or it will not last as long, or it'll be like NRS, right? Like, I think the NRS example is weird, right? Because NRS players, like, they don't very often go back to Injustice 2, MKX, things like that. They just kind of play the new game as it comes out because NRS decides what is popular. They have all the control. They make all the decisions. So the game with the most prize pods, the game with the most attention, the game with the most support is their new game. That's the one that they want you to buy. That doesn't have to be the case with certain games, so it's cool that we create better experiences for games like that.
Yeah, I actually never really thought about it that way. But that is it's a good point. Um, and I think too, it's sort of like the homegrown nature of a lot of the fighting game community is very much like, hey, if no one else is gonna do it yourself. And I know there's like,
Yeah,
oh, sorry, go
yeah.
ahead.
Just to add, there are people who complain like, oh, people come to me and complain, oh, I wish French Bread were doing what you're doing, or I wish Capcom would just fix the netcode or whatever. It's like, if we hold to that mentality that at some point Lord Arxis is going to come down and bless us or whatever, right? Then nothing ever happens because usually it doesn't happen. Usually they don't fix the netcode. Usually they don't add the features that you want. Usually they just make a new game and they move on.
Or
That's historically been what happened.
or they take fan work and put it into their game.
Or they just straight up steal from you, right? Sometimes that stuff happens. So you can't set the expectations on the publishers in every single situation. Like if Capcom comes out with a bad game, then they need to fix their game, right? But if somebody has the ability to fix the game or decides to put the effort in, then we need to support that, right? Because otherwise, the publisher will decide what we get to play and what we don't get to play, and that's not the fighting game community is not the Street Fighter community or the Melty Blood community or the Guilty Gear community. It is all of them, right? So we get to make our own decision as to what we get to.
Yeah, definitely. Um, I won't lie, the example that came up to mind was Slippy with Melee on Dolphin, and just Dolphin in general. A lot of the net play that has been introduced. I know I'm probably butchering it, but Tatsunoko v Capcom I know has a pretty
Oh, I'm
big
a big
scene.
fan of Tatsunoko. That's correct. I'm a big fan of that game. Everybody should play Tatsunoko. It's a
I've thought
weird
about
game.
it. Yeah.
Everyone should play Tatsunoko at least once. It's a weird game. It's kind of like what if how I would best describe Tatsunoko as a game. If you've ever seen Marvel 2 and then wondered what a 3D version of that would look like, Marvel 3 is a very different game compared to Marvel 2. But Tatsunoko feels more like what Marvel 2 was. It has that energy. It's kind of crazier. It has like crazy mechanics and it's not afraid to go into more broken, barely thought about stuff. Marvel 3 is an awesome game, but it has a very different tone. So I think if anyone here, listening to this really likes Marvel 2, try Tatsunoko. You'll probably like it. It's a cool game. Give it a try. Absolutely.
Yeah, so I guess going from that, what have you been playing this year?
Oh God, what have I been playing? Let me just go to Steam. I have Steam right here.
That's fair.
And earlier today, I was playing a lot of Fantasy Strike because I was in Frosty Frosting's bracket. It was the only one that I could play in because all of them are restricted to North America, and I'm down here in Central America, and I really wanted to just play, despite I don't play in a lot of tournaments, so I really wanted to play in this one, so I had fun playing that. I haven't been playing a lot of fighting games recently, but looking at my history, the last things I've been playing are Accent Core, Plus R, and Punch Planet, which makes sense. I'm a big fan of Accent Core Plus R's GGPO update, obviously. It's really fun to be able to play it, and a lot of people really like it, so I like to be there and just play with people of different skill levels. Um, and Punch Planet is another fighting game that I'm actually a really big fan of. It's one of my favorite fighting games. I really like the game system, so it's no surprise that I have that in my list recently. Um, and yeah, I mean, everything before that is from last year. I had been playing a little bit of Tekken, a little bit of Fight of Animals. I had played O2UM, the King of Fighters update, but that was all last year. So I've been playing I've been pretty relaxed off the fighting games recently, but I've probably been playing Multi Blood, Guilty Gear, and Punch Planet the most recently.
Yeah. So you brought up last year. There's a lot to unpack there. Um,
There's a lot.
but how was in terms of fighting games? How was 2020 for you?
I had a good 2020 in terms of fighting games, but you have to understand where I am, right? Like people don't know me for what I do in real life. I'm very busy in real life. I have a day job and I go to school. So I'm friends with the people who work at my local, but you're not going to see me at my local very often. My local is very close to my job. Where they play Street Fighter 5 and Dragon Ball. Sometimes I show up and I play Street Fighter 5. I play Ed in Street Fighter 5. Sometimes I'll go, talk to him, play. Um, but I'm not there very often because I have a very busy schedule. So my fighting game experience, 99% of the time, is playing online, right? So one, I like games with rollback. A lot of people say, "Oh, well, what if rollback? If the game has rollback, but what if the game's not good?" Well, I don't think that's true of the games that I like to play. I really like to play Killer Instinct. I really like to play, Guilty Gear now. I like playing Multi Blood. Um, I like playing Fight of Animals, which has great rollback. All these, I like playing games on Fightcade. I'm a big fan of some of the games on Fightcade. So, you know, I had more people to play with online, all around. Like I was playing, playing in net play brackets. I was helping run tournaments. I ran a lot of tournaments in 2020, online tournaments. I was helping try new forms of net play. I remember that when the GGPO update came out, I ran the first tournament for it, for Plus R. So I got to experience that. It worked. Everything worked, thankfully. Nothing broke. That was great. Um, So my experience in 2020 was just like embracing the net play and helping people get through what I had already been used to, right? Because there's a lot of people talk, a lot of the FGC diehard talk a lot about the offline experience, but most people don't get to that, right? There really is not a local on every corner in most of the world. Most people play a fighting game, they play offline, they play single player, they play maybe with their family who are likewise just as inexperienced as them or similar, or they play online. And depending on how the online goes, either they'll play a couple hours and hate it, or they'll keep playing for hundreds of hours because they like it because the net play is well designed. So if I had to summarize, I would just say that net play was the focus of 2020, and I was here for it. I don't have any problem playing people online if the net play serves it.
Yeah, there's definitely a good point to be made there that not everyone has had that local offline experience. Um, I know in my case, I do now. I mean, I don't go all that often, um, because of everything going on, but
Yeah,
um, I do know that when I first started playing back in March, I was no locals, nothing really. I mean, there was a Smash community, but for the most part, there was nothing like traditional fighting game wise. So online really was what kept me playing.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is how most people play fighting games, whether we like to admit it or not, right? Whether we like to say it or not, most people will play a fighting game online for the first time. That's how they're going to decide if they want to get into the genre or not. So, we need to have the ability. We need to have better net play. We need to have a good introduction to fighting games for people who are just buying, the first game they see off the shelf and they decide to pick up a fighting game. And if they don't have a good experience, they're not going to want to get into the genre, right? Um, I understand it. I mean, like I mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, my first experience with a fighting game was I was fucking confused. So I stopped playing. I didn't understand anything. Nothing was explained, and the systems were obscure, and I don't think I ever got to play anyone online. So I wasn't a big fan of it, and I put in 150 to 200 hours in Dragon Ball, and at that point, I had found out about other games with rollback netcode, and I stopped playing that. But I decided at that point that I liked fighting games, and so I continued playing after that. I just went to go play different games.
Yeah, which honestly is I really don't blame you. I love Fighter Z. It's a great game, but it's not the easiest to play.
Yeah,
Um,
I wish I could enjoy it a little more than I do nowadays, but maybe someday.
yeah. I know that there is a parsec scene for it. I have a few
Yes, there
friends,
is.
but
Yeah, there is.
I don't know how prevalent that is with most players.
I mean, I play Parsec Sam Show 7 actually a little bit because I'm friends with people who run like Sam Show lobbies every other weekend or just every weekend usually, and so I have like an experience playing that game over Parsec. But I mean, I like I said at the beginning, I don't have any problem playing games with rollback. I'm a big fan of a lot of games with rollback, so I just kind of whenever I think about it, I just play those games. Like I understand people who have like this deep seated love for King of Fighters 13 or Sam Show 7 or Dragon Ball, but I don't know that I love those games as so much as to decide that over all the fighting games that are out there that are in my Steam library right now or on Fightcade, I really want to put myself through Parsec. I understand, I really do, the people who like that stuff, but to me, that's more of like every once in a while. Every once in a while, I'll dip in and play those games. It's like, oh yeah, I really want to. It sounds like fun to play this game right now.
Yeah, that's sort of what's kept me from delving into like KOF 13. Is just the fact that there's not really a community to easily play with. But that's also because the game doesn't have lobby systems, which is
Yeah, if I don't know exactly who runs the KOF 13 Parsec servers, but I'm sure if you guys look it up, like KOF 13 Parsec on Twitter, you'll probably find some of the people who run those lobbies. And if you're near them, they have like East Coast and West Coast for US. I don't know about EU, but if you're near them, then give it a try. Absolutely, it's a lot of fun.
yeah. I mean, I definitely see where you're coming from. I know that my experience hasn't been I've had some good experiences with Parsec, but that's mainly because I've started picking up Marvel 3. But I definitely know that I like the game despite the Parsec issue. It's not. I've had that issue with other games, and it's not going to get me into playing them because it's just too much work to not be able to hop in.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is definitely difficult to get into. The community tries to make it as easy as possible. I've personally not had too much of a problem. I usually just add them on Parsec, get into Discord, follow the rotation. I get to play. You know, it's not that difficult really, but it is definitely like you have to know somebody, right? Or you have to, you know, make the extra effort to get in there and you know be ready to play. Um, it's not the same as like me hopping on my desk chair at the end of the day and playing like Killer Instinct and just matchmaking and instantly finding someone because everyone's playing all the time because people love KI. Stuff like that, right? It's definitely a different experience.
Yeah. Um, I guess since we've just talked a bit about getting people in and having a more understandable basis for of knowledge and that. I know you from actually Sajam talked about your work with the SRK Wiki,
Yes, he did.
and
Yes.
so I was curious, how did you get involved with running SRK Mikazumi? I
Okay.
can't pronounce anything right.
Yeah, that is an interesting one. Basically, Zach, who people probably know as Preppy on Twitter, he's the guy who develops Palmod for color schemes and like fight game games. Um, he reached out to me asking me if I would be interested in helping them revamp the wiki because he has been kind of coordinating an effort to revamp several pieces of Shoryuken.com. Shoryuken.com, the forums, the front page, the not no longer the wiki, but the other pieces of the the website at a time was in a lot of different pieces, and some people were in control of some parts, and other people in control of other parts, right? So I was specifically asked if I could bring on board the wiki, and at that point, I had already been doing work with Mizuumi. So I said, "Yeah, sure, that sounds great. Let's do it." It would be huge for me to have the ability to help bring forward one of the most important pieces of information on the FGC. So when we did that, um, basically, I was put in charge of how we were going to figure out the wiki, how what the situation was. I took control. I got some new hardware for the servers. I moved everything onto the new hardware. We configured it in a way that was very similar to the way Mizuumi worked because the way Mizuumi is set up now works pretty well, right? There were a couple of things that we needed to change and a couple of rules that needed to be adjusted so that we could deal with just the amount of old, leftover content from Shoryuken that was on the wiki at that point. But we set it up in a very similar way, and now when you work on Shoryuken.com's wiki and you work on Mizuumi wiki, you have a very similar editing experience because that consistency needs to exist. One of the things that is kind of annoying about when people write Google Docs for fighting game resources or Google Sheets is that they're very hard to take a copy of and save, right, and put it somewhere else so that in case it gets lost, you have it, right. Uh, that's not something you can do very easily with documents. Sometimes that's something you just can't do with documents. The way Google Docs works, sometimes you just can't get a copy of it.
Like with the
So
oh sorry.
yeah, I know what you're going to get at in a second, but what I'm saying is that like the way that we set up Shoryuken Wiki was that we needed to save all this information that was just being left there and nobody could change it. So basically, Preppy reached out to me. I accepted, and I configured it in a very similar way to the way Mizuumi works, and that's just how we're doing business today. I mean, there are people who were already working on Shoryuken, right? There were people who like in the background, just kind of like categorizing things and figuring out what's junk and what isn't. But they couldn't really make big changes because they weren't server administrators. They didn't have the experience or they didn't have the accesses. So that's where I came in. Nowadays, Shoryuken and Mizuumi, there are people who work on them who have a lot more to do with the editing part than I do. All that stuff just takes too much time for me to work on. So I just keep them running basically now.
Yeah. I guess going deeper, how did you get involved with Mizumi?
That's a that goes even further
Oh.
back. So, um, if you guys don't know, I represent GBL.GG. That's just the people I play video games with, right? We have a little organization. We stream and all that stuff. And at the time, I had been configuring a website for us so that we could have all of our streams on one page. And I recall that it was very easy for us to set up a wiki site through our web host. And I decided, it might be really smart if we had a wiki, because I've heard at that point I had heard that several games were not able to have wikis on Mizuumi because they were out of space. So what I did was I joined the Mizuumi Discord. I asked the administrators, and I said, if you guys are unable to accept any games, would you feel if you guys forwarded them to our wiki that we just opened? And they agreed. So I think like 3 games were sent to us, and we set them up, and we were doing a pretty good job. It was mostly just setting up Mizuumi, like very similar to Mizuumi, because Mizuumi was just the gold standard at that point. It kind of still is. Mizuumi was just like the best example of a wiki that we had at that point, and it was just extremely functional. The way that so many games were there, and they were all efficiently organized. And then the administrator of Mizuumi at the time, Shimatora, from the EFC community, had said, actually, we need somebody to kind of take over the hosting of Mizuumi, because the person who hosts it right now is not willing to invest any more money in it. They've been out of the FGC for a while, and they just would rather somebody who's more invested in it take over the project. So they offered, myself the ability to host the wiki. I was like, oh, well, yeah, I guess, right? Like, why not? At that point, we had been setting up something very similar to Mizuumi. We may as well just host Mizuumi. I mean, it was the same deal, right? And it kind of was. At that point, I had already had a little bit of experience with setting up a wiki from the wiki that we had on our own site for a little bit. So I had to learn some stuff, but I didn't have to learn like a whole lot. It took us a weekend for us to do all the work. And we installed Mizuumi on the new server that we had at that point. We had actually upgraded to another server later on when Shoryuken came around. But it was just kind of like a really crazy week for me, because I was like, oh, it'd be funny. Let's host a wiki, right? That seems like it might be useful. And then suddenly I'm in charge of like the biggest anime fighter resource on the internet. I don't know how that happened, but I'm glad that Shimatora trusted me with that, because that was a lot of confidence to put in somebody who was kind of new at the time.
Yeah, and honestly, I do have to say this is a personal, but just a I can't talk tonight, sorry. A personal thank you, because I know for me at least, your work with the SRK Wiki and Mizuumi has done a ton to help get me into games, and I know
I mean,
I
I
don't.
hope so, right?
Yeah,
It would be completely useless if it didn't. I'm glad
yeah,
that people find it useful to this day. There's a lot of conversations about like what kind of content people should make in the FGC, and just to kind of give you an example of what I'm talking about, I think wikis are like, I don't think you'll ever be able to beat a wiki in terms of information. Like, I'm gonna do an example right now. I'm gonna go to, I don't know if it's still there, but I'm gonna go to Sajam's channel now that you bring it up. Sajam, and he has like a very specific video pinned to his channel. Oh, it's not there anymore. He used to have a video like how to find the FGC in your area or something like that, and he would link to a spreadsheet with discords, right?
right.
I don't know. I'm sure a lot of people who have been in the FGC for a while will remember the spreadsheet. Well, that person decided to stop supporting it, and they deleted it. And I'm like, that's crazy. Well, eventually we did actually recover the spreadsheet, and now the SRK wiki is like the new home of that. But when we consider a wiki page you can change. That video cannot be changed, right? And if you go back and you find that Sajam video, or somebody finds it and they go try to find this Discord sheet, they're gonna be lost, right? Well, and that can happen with games, right? Like if somebody makes a video and then the patch changes it, you can't change the video. You got to make a new one, right? So there's a lot of problems with the way that fighting game content is presented in video form. That's not to say video form content is bad. I love a lot of video form content with FGCs. Shout out to Rufumonger. I love his channel. But yeah, wikis are always going to stay relevant, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's definitely a really fair thing, and I was gonna you we you said that we'd get to it, but I was gonna bring up the example of the FGC locals spreadsheet.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, it's unfortunate what happened there, but I'm glad that now that nowadays we have that on wiki pages. I have the spreadsheet, but I will not be putting it back up because what would that solve? We'll just be in the exact same situation, right? So I have a backup copy that people can read now, but if people want to add things to it, they have to go and add them on the wiki pages where people can make backups in case something happens. Because
yeah,
that whole situation was just really dumb, and I would very much like to avoid it in the future.
yeah, and if I don't want to not make assumptions, but if anything ever happens and you have to step down or move away, or the other members of the administration have to move away, someone else can come in and still continue the work. It's not one person holding up the
Yeah,
whole system.
so that's the thing, right? Like, um, if you want to make a copy of SRK right now, you can. All you got to do is go to the export page, and you can type out any pages that you want, and you can save them, and the wiki software will give you a copy of the page. Or you can go to Wayback Machine on the Internet Archive, and you can type in the URL of the page you want to save, and you can save it, right? And that way you have a copy of it that everyone else can read too. So this was not possible with the spreadsheet. Um, we could only recover like 50 out of the hundreds of servers that were on that, because the way Google Docs works, it just prevents Wayback Machine from functioning, and you can't save a copy of it because you can limit who can save a copy with Google Sheets, which I think is like the most hostile thing that Google has ever done. But it is what it is. Um, Basically, so there's those two ways that you can make a backup of any page. But let's say that I have to stop for whatever reason. It's not that hard to set up a wiki somewhere else, right? Like I've done it twice at this point, um, and I'm sure somebody else would be able to as well. And that's why I always recommend that other people in the FGC also get involved with stuff like this, and they make their own community resources, because you know I don't talk to a lot of other people who know how to run wiki software. Like it's between myself, Roger from the Tekken Discord, Desmond at Dream Cancel, Kevin Su at Dustloop, and that's kind of it. Everyone else, I don't know. I don't know them, and I guess whoever runs New Challenger Wiki, right, and Hard Edge, like those are the only people I know who know how to run a wiki. So that's not a lot of people, right? So we definitely need to, in the FGC as a whole, invest in our ability to create our own solutions, right? This goes back to what I was saying earlier about games having their own experience.
Yeah. Sorry, just a quick question. Does Tekken have a wiki? Because I know,
Yeah. Okay. So we didn't. This is new. This is something that happened this year.
yeah, I
So
was gonna
if you
say,
guys don't know about this, then head over to wavu.wiki. It's wavu.wiki. That is the name of a website that was set up by the people over at Tekken Zaibatsu by one guy who used to run a website specifically for how to play Lei. No, Lee. Was it Lee? I think it was Lee that he played in Tekken, and he set up like a huge website. And then we had entered the Discord to ask them if they were interested in setting up a wiki, and the guy put together a wiki in like a day, and that became an actual Tekken wiki. So now, if you go to wabu.wiki, you can check out like I think like half of the roster now have pages. There's some that are missing still, but there's an actual Tekken 7 wiki now. Like, my logic at the time was like I saw the Tekken Zaibatsu Discord and I saw they had like 30,000 members. And I'm like, really? You guys have 30,000 people here? You guys can't make a wiki, right? And at that point, I knew that there were a bunch of apps for like frame data and stuff for Tekken. I'm like, all these people can make apps and you know websites and stuff, and there's no wiki. Like, really? Why is there no wiki? And I was just so confused. Anyway, I went in and I explained to them, guys, here's why a wiki is good, and they were like, oh, why use a wiki? And I'm like, okay, here's why a wiki's good. Here's what the benefits it gives you. Here's what you can do with it. Here's what you can't do with it. And they were on board. So now there's a wiki for Tekken 7 as of this year. So I'm really happy about that. And I don't have anything to do with this wiki. I don't have an account on it. I just kind of told them that a wiki was really cool. And now they manage this all by themselves. And I'm really happy that they do, because that's one more person or one more group of people who know how to use a wiki. So if I'm not present and somebody needs to lend a hand, there are now more people who know how to use wiki. I think that's a win.
Yeah, that's honestly really awesome to hear. Um, so I'm looking at the list now, and I we sort of touched on it, but what sort of challenges have you had with running the two wikis?
Uh, hmm. What challenge? It's just that there's a lot. There's a lot to cover, I guess. The biggest thing is just that, like, since I keep the systems running and everyone else does the editing, then I do a lot of very boring stuff, right? I just make accounts. I tell people if something's okay to do or not. I give them ideas. I, point them to people to talk to. So there's just a lot of, I guess, small, like, menial tasks associated with it that compounds on me. Like, even right now, I have stuff that I need to do, right? That people are waiting on me to do. Uh, and it's all very small things, but it is stuff that takes a lot of your time. Um, and it kind of sucks because there's a couple of games on these wikis that I would like to fill out pages for and I would like to do research for, but between work, my studies, and giving myself a break, I usually don't get time to do like wiki page editing, right? So it takes away from the thing that I enjoy because I really like writing wiki pages and I like doing the research. But in my position, it's very difficult for me to do edits. Um, that's funny. I say that though, knowing that the previous administrator of Mizuumi, Shimatora, does used to do so much for the Eternal Fighter Zero wiki and still does. Like, they were running Mizuumi and they were filling out pages, they were uploading match footage, they were, coming up with tech, and I just, like, that's a lot of dedication, but yeah, it definitely takes a lot of your time.
Yeah. Um, I know that I've seen you talk a bit about some of the edits and dealing with a lot of like the old school. And let me know if I'm touching on like a rough subject, but some of the old school pages and that, and a bit more of the I guess the word I'm gonna use is some of the assholes who wrote some
You mean
pages.
like just garbage
Yeah,
that exists? Yeah, I mean, there's garbage. There's a lot of garbage on the wiki pages. There's a lot of stuff that you know. I think at some point SRK wiki was open edit, and I think, like, at some point there were a lot of accounts just being made by, like, without any sort of vetting whatsoever. So there was a lot of garbage, and a lot of people think that it, there are pages on these old wikis where some of it's like trash, like absolute like toilet humor, and some of it's funny, like stop using sweep, the big gif, stop using sweep on the Iori's page in KOF 98, or another classic is what is it? What is it? He sucks, don't play him. Who is it? The KOF 98 character? It's like, he sucks, don't play him. I'm gonna look this up. There's like stuff like that all over the place, and like, some of it's funny to this day. Okay, yeah, Andy. Like, if I go to Andy's page, it says Andy sucks, don't play him. People think it's funny, right? But, like, that culture that created stuff like that also created pages that are covered in, like, profanity, and it also created, like, edits of people who thought it would just be funny to delete pages, like, randomly, stuff like that. Like, just for no reason, for no apparent reason, people would do stuff like that. Nowadays, people ask, like, oh, wiki should be, more, they should have more humor, or they should be written better and stuff like that. And it's like, I would like for that to be the case, but if we don't tell people to cut it out, then people go around and just fill our wikis with garbage, and it makes it very hard for the people who are doing, like, meaningful work to actually go back and look at edits and decide what is true and what isn't true, and what needs to stay and what needs to be there, because, like, nobody wants nobody really wants to have to go through a bunch of edits where somebody decided to fill the page with, like, jokes, right? Like, it doesn't help. It really doesn't. Even though there are examples of wiki pages that have humor in them and they're funny, it it's I promise you that going in there with the intent to make it funny almost never works. Very few people are funny like that. So we've definitely had to change the culture for editing wikis a little bit. just a little bit.
Yeah. Um, I guess another question I had was again another one that I want to ask everyone who comes onto the show, but what would you say that your fondest moment in the FGC has been?
Oh, definitely last year when I did Animibo for Fight of Animals. My we Animibo Fight of Animals was Western side for US and EU, and Asia side for East Asia and Japan and Southeast Asia. So China, Taiwan, Singapore, Japan, all those places, Indonesia. Um, and I liked doing the Western bracket because I was the one streaming it and I was the one doing commentary. And I was having a great time. It was a huge bracket. I think we were close to 64 players. And it was like the biggest bracket we had ever seen for the game at the time. We were playing Fight of Animals. I mentioned it. But what was more interesting was the Asian bracket because it was a smaller bracket, but I had not known any of these people prior to that event, right? I reached out to the developers of Fight of Animals who are in Taiwan, and I asked them if they really wanted to do an Asian bracket, and I was like, I was skeptical of it because I didn't know anyone on that side of the FGC. Uh, so I asked them, and a lot, these guys, these developers of Fight of Animals, they're fighting game players just like us. They play play Street Fighter. There's videos of them in like if you go through old like Capcom Pro Tour footage, you can find them all because they just really like playing fighting games. And I I asked them to see if they could find a commentator, and they came back to me with somebody. I had never met the guy in my life. I didn't know who he was, and he brought somebody else with him to commentate as well, and they commentated and they streamed it. I didn't know who any of these people were, but they killed it. Like the commentary was awesome. They were funny. There was a bunch of memes about it. The commentary was reading stuff in English, and it was just super funny. Uh, and all of the players were like speaking. I had brought in a couple of people on the bracket runner side that I did know from where are they from? They're from Singapore. Yeah, from Singapore. I had brought in a couple of people from Singapore who I knew already because they had played the game with us a couple of times, and they were helping us manage like people who only spoke like Chinese and Japanese. And I was just shocked to see all this come together because I had never done anything like it at the time. I had never had to deal with people who I didn't speak any of their languages. I had never had to deal with commentators that I could barely communicate with. And yet it all worked out, and we had an awesome stream. We had an awesome bracket. Everyone had fun. The grand finals were super awesome. People were just amazed by what was happening. And I think, as much fun as I had running the Western bracket I expected. That was me. I expected to do well. The Asian bracket was a complete surprise to me. That's what I enjoyed the most.
Yeah, honestly, I'm not gonna lie, I've heard of Fight of Animals, but this is making me want to check it out a bit more. So when I get some extra pocket money, I'm
Give it
definitely
a
gonna try
shot,
it out.
guys.
Yeah.
It's not that expensive. It's on PS4, Steam, and Switch. It's $10, I want to say. It's got rollback with lobbies, and the community is more than happy to play with you. Also, give it a try.
Yeah. So then I have to say, is there anything you're looking forward to for 2021 in regards to fighting
Yeah.
games?
I thought about this when you sent me this question, and the thing I'm looking forward to is to being surprised. Honestly, there's a lot of stuff. Okay, so if let's go back, not even like 3 weeks ago, 2021 came out. Nobody knew what the future of fighting games was coming out, aside from like Guilty Gear Strive, and out of nowhere, there's this little browser game called Tough Love Arena that comes out, and it's like you play it in your browser, and it's got rollback netcode, and you can see all the frame data in the game. And everyone's just like, "Where the fuck did this come from?" Everyone was surprised, uh, and I had a lot of fun with it, and I still have a lot of fun with it. It's such an awesome little game, and that kind of stuff is my favorite thing in FGC. When somebody comes out of left field with something really cool and different, right? And there were moments like that during 2020 when there was like Slippy came out for Melee, to go into Smash. Like that was out of nowhere for most people, unless you knew, right? There were people who knew, but that was out of nowhere. Stuff like that. There was Tough Love Arena, like I mentioned, and little things throughout the year, like Fight K2 coming out last year, but for real this time, like because Fight K2 had been around for a while, but they didn't like do a big update until last year. and then Fight K2 was awesome, and people were having like a ton of fun playing games that were just not playable before that. Stuff like that uh, are the kinds of surprises that I look forward to. Like a new game will come out, like Guilty Gear Strive's coming out. Like I know it is. You're gonna like it or you're gonna hate it, but it's gonna come out. But I don't know what else exists out there. What are the surprises that are coming from the fighting game community? I don't know yet. I'm looking forward to seeing what surprises me.
Yeah, honestly, that's a really cool perspective to have on it. Um, I guess the last question I had was if you had anything to say to people who are looking to get more involved with their communities, whether it's through wiki work, organizing, brackets, or anything like that, if you just had anything to say.
Um, I would say to all those people, probably just to um, not worry too much about what people are doing already and do your own thing. Um, because, like, there's always going to be someone who tries to gatekeep you, right? Like, if you. That was one of the things that I did when I was developing this Melty Blood program that I'm working on over the past week. Is I'm sure other people are working on projects, but this is my project. I want to see it real. So I'm going to do it. And then I'm going to show it to people. And then if they want to use it, they can. And if they disagree with it, they can disagree with it. But it exists, right? And I think that logic needs to happen if you want to get anything done in fighting games or like a gaming community. You just need to have an idea and you need to go for it. Like, what do you want, right? What do you want to do? Do you want to improve the amount of information that's available for a game? Just do it, right? Just do it. Just go out there and do it. And then once you have something, show it to people. And because this is a community of just people who play video games, either they're going to think it's cool or they're not, right? But you can still do it. Nobody's going to stop you. This is not your job. People don't tell you what to do, right? So my advice to people, if you want to run a tournament, if you want to start writing resources, if you want to make a video, if you want to make a show, just do it, right? Just don't stop yourself. There's just absolutely no reason not to. Nobody tells you what to do in this community. I don't care what big player on Twitter says about what you're doing. You can still do it, right? Nobody's going to stop you. Either people like it or they don't, but you have the idea and you have every right to do it, right? As long as it's not illegal or something. I don't know. Just go out there and do it. Because if we don't have people who are bold enough to try, then we wouldn't have all the stuff that we have already, I would say.
Yeah. I know. Speaking from personal experience, I know some people have sort of done something similar to what this show is, but it was more sort of, hey, it's my version of it. People like it, they like it. If they don't, they don't. And I'm just gonna do it because it's for me.
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of give you my own experiences, I had run a couple of podcast episodes like last year, and we invited a couple of fighting game developers, and I was very lucky to I felt very lucky to have them on the show. But in retrospect, all I had to do was ask, and they said yes. And people are very friendly in this community when they want, most of them. There's a lot of people who are that maybe not as, as friendly or sociable, but there's a lot of them. I've spoken to developers from different fighting games like Shady K, who works on Battle for the Grid. I've spoken to David Serlin. Uh, Obviously, Just Fantasy Strike. I've spoken to the people over at Digital Crafter. I talk to them every once in a while. Just people, right? There's just people, and more often than not, I have a good experience walking away from them. They're happy to answer any questions because this is a community, right? Like nobody's out here saying like, oh yeah, you have to play this game and you have to play it like this. You can do whatever you want. So I think that's a great thing about this community in particular. It's something that a lot of other communities just don't get to have. Like your favorite MOBA, your favorite shooter, it's whatever the developer wants, and that's kind of it. So don't be afraid to ask in fighting games. Just do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Nobody's gonna stop you.
I guess now that we're wrapping up, did you have anything you wanted to plug? Social media, Twitch
Plug,
streams?
sure, why not? I stream. I'm doing a different approach to streaming now. I'm over on Twitter at Shib V Live. You guys can check me out over there. Well, I have a new account just for streaming. and I'm also posting updates on my Melty Blood modding on that account, so you can check it out. My other account is for boring wiki stuff, just so that people know when I'm being serious and when I'm not, because I don't want people to get confused about what I'm playing with and what I'm not. But no, overall, just check me out on Twitter if you like what I'm doing, and just SRK. Wiki.shoryuken.com for your wiki needs. Wiki.gbl.gg is Mizuumi, and yeah, support your local fighting game players. That's all.
All right. Well, I appreciate having you on. I appreciate you taking your time out of your day to come on and talk to me.
Absolutely.
And yeah. Well, like I said, thank you. And yeah, I guess that's all.
I guess that's all. So yeah, thank you for having me on once again, and everybody enjoy the rest of your day. If you're listening to this.
Hey everyone. Just wanted to say thank you for listening. Hope you all enjoyed this episode. I'm really excited for some of the guests I have on coming up. I've been asking around, getting some people on, and I'm looking forward to it. Um, Back on my own self promotion. As previously mentioned, I have a Ko-fi, so if you would like to give me some money, I would greatly appreciate it. And any money goes back into the fighting game community, whether it's getting games to run for brackets or uh, more software. I've been looking at getting like a webcam and a better mic for the show and my streams. I do stream on twitch.tv/RoxEpoxyDeluxe, and I have a Twitter at RoxEpoxyDeluxe. I have started a Discord. It's still a bit of a work in progress, but I will put the link down below. So if anyone's interested in that, feel free to hop in. Um, and yeah, that's all I had to say. So thank you all for listening. I'll see you all next episode, and bye bye.